Welcome to Case Briefs with Megan. Let's make this case brief. In this day and age, we know about creators from Vine, from TikTok, who especially blew off in about 2020 when COVID all kept us indoors. And now we have this new kind of micro celebrity known as the influencer. But did you know that there have been influencers way before 2020? However, as we'll learn in the contracts case, Wood versus Lucy, Lady Duff-Gordon, we'll learn about how one of these early influencers actually got herself in quite a bit of legal trouble. So this is Lady Duff-Gordon. She's known as a fashion designer, and she designs clothes, lingerie, the like, for people who are royalty, for the rich and famous, and she's also had like some of her clothing in some silent films. Also, fun fact, she's a Titanic survivor, which is crazy. Here's the deal with Lady Duff-Gordon. If you happen to see her name, like Lucille, which is also the name of her clothing brand, on a garment, you usually know that that's a high quality garment. It's high fashion, and she prides herself on being able to do that. So she's like an early 1900s influencer, which is really cool. Plaintiff in this case, Woods, is kind of like an advertising agent. He helps to put people's names on garments so that items sell well. And Lucy comes to him and says, "Hey, I will cut you a deal." With Lucille is that she says, "I will let you exclusively use my name on garments, or I will help you to license out my name for exactly 1 year, always subject to my approval on the designs or whatever you're trying to put your name on. But this is an exclusive contract with return. What does she get? She gets one half of all of the profits from whatever contracts he decides to. This is also a contract that renews annually unless he gets a notice 90 days before the contract is supposed to end, which is usually April 1st. In this case, it's April 1st, 1950. Lady Duff-Gordon kind of does something shady, and she cuts a deal with this brand here, Sears. Maybe your mom or your grandma love. Sears has this really good idea where they want to take high fashion and they want to make some sort of project that looks like high fashion but is affordable for the masses, for the common people. And Lucy's way in on that. And she's like, "Yeah, you guys can use my name if you want, but remember, she's got that exclusive contract with Wood that says only he can get her into these contracts." As we can imagine, Wood kind of has a problem with that. Of course, now he brings her to court. That's why we're here. And Lady Macduff says, "Hold on, we don't even have a contract." A quick recap. In case you're new to contract law, there are three things that you need in order to form a contract. You need an offer, you need acceptance, and then you need consideration. Consideration is like, you know, I promise you this if you promise me. Lady Duff-Gordon argues and says, "Look, we've got my offer, we've got both of us accepting this, but there's no consideration because Wood here hasn't promised anything back to me." Got this argument here. There's no consideration. And what does the court say, you might ask? What the court does here is they say, "Look, even though Wood hasn't explicitly promised anything, there is an implied promise with an obligation," is what they call it. It says, "Look, when you have a contract like this where one person is saying you have the exclusive right to get me into any contracts that you think are going to make us money, that person is probably going to want to do a pretty good job in making sure that they go and they get contracts taken care of, that they bring in money, because without them doing a good job, neither person is going to make any money." We even go a step further and we take a look at Wood's contract, which says that he is going to do whatever it takes to make sure that her rights are protected by making sure any copyrights or trademarks or patents with her name on it are all protected. He'll do whatever it takes. So he is kind of promising that he's going to do a really good job in making sure not only are her rights protected, but that they both make some money out of this. This case, even though the consideration isn't express, it's not like open wide in the contract, you can read what the consideration is. The consideration can be implied. You have to look at the intent of why people are entering into this agreement. And it's so that they can both make a little bit of money. Based on the wording that we have here in the contract, it can be implied that Wood wanted to make some money and he wanted to help Lucy do the same thing. Means that they did in fact have a contract, and that means that Lucy, by entering into her agreement with Sears, broke that contract, so she lost the case. Takeaway from this case is artists, read your contracts.